Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming, and those of you who are joining us online, thank you for being with us today. Let's begin with a prayer.
Let me just say a few things.
Okay. Devi wants to say a few words.
I just want to give you a little background about Inner Renewal Retreat, just the history of it. Swamiji, in the very first year of Ananda, 1968-69, started Spiritual Renewal Week. And we've had that every year in the summer since that time. And then I think it was
25
years ago, Jyotish and I thought, we need something in the winter because everybody, their energy kind of drops and it's rainy and it's cold. So we said, this will just be for Ananda community residents only. And no gas,
just a group retreat together.
Yes. And that lasted for a few years. And then guests started wanting to come. So, okay, just a few. And then that went on and more people came. And then we said, well, let's offer it online. And then this year we said, let's offer it online for free. And as you see, we have, is it almost 4,000 now?
Yeah, it must
Wow.
be, because those are over 3,300 computers, and we know that many groups are watching.
And so, and half of them are brand new people.
Which is wonderful.
So it just started from, this is a story of Ananda. It starts with a little seed in Swami Kriyananda's mind, and now it's just, people are being reached all over the world. So we're very grateful to those of you who are joining us online, and for those of you who are here. And also we want to give a really warm welcome to people who are here for the very first time. We hope you just enjoy the magic and the beauty and the warmth and the love and the joy that is Ananda Village.
But part of the, she agrees, good. Part of the history is the year of the great name change. So for many years we called it Winter Renewal Week because we needed something to renew our spirits during the winter. And then one year we got about 4 feet of snow. And so we figured the next year we don't need to renew winter. We need to renew our spirits. So we changed it to Inner Renewal Week.
Okay, well, this week, and by the way, Jitendra, who was beautifully leading the chanting, said there were 350 people live online for the morning meditation. That's amazing.
Oh, wonderful.
Just from all over the world. So anyway, let's start with a prayer and then go from there.
Get centered. The secret of meditation is centering your energy and bringing it up. Concentrate at the heart center and at the point between the eyebrows. Feel that you're joining those two centers. Pray together. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, Friend, beloved God, Great Masters, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Shri Yukteswar, beloved Guru, Paramahansa Yogananda Ji, great saints of all religions, we humbly bow to you all. Beloved Master, beloved Swamiji, help us to connect deeply with your teachings, with your techniques, but above all, with your love and joy. And help us be channels to bring thy light to all the world. Om. Peace. Amen. And now, before the singers, there is one more tradition.
Yeah, our theme for this week, this retreat, you probably know, is embracing your Dharma, your path to liberation. And so another tradition that we have done for many years, Jyotish blows a conch shell. It's traditional in India. It's putting out the vibration of Om into the world. And so we will do this, and particularly because we're talking about Dharma this week, right action, truth. Let's feel as we listen to this conch that it's projecting truth and right action into the world. So we'll blow the conch and then the singers.
The tradition started probably 10 years ago. We were giving the Inner Renewal Week classes, and the theme for that week was the Mahabharata, the Bhagavad Gita. And the Bhagavad Gita starts with the two armies representing the dark, materialistic, contractive forces facing off against the light, expansive, uplifting forces. And at the very beginning of the Gita, the two forces, the Pandava brothers, blow a conch. And Master explains that the blowing of the conch is actually the sounds of the chakras. So that sound vibration is drawing the consciousness in and up. And then the outer enemies start banging with cymbals and clanging noises and so on. And Master said that's the body and the senses trying to pull us away from meditation. So as well as vibrating the idea of Dharma out into the world, also recognize that as we blow the conch, it's going to awaken our inner powers, especially our chakras. Now, I only do this once a year, so bear with me.
Walk like a man, even though you walk alone. Why court approval once the road is known? Let come who will, but if they all turn home, the goal still awaits you. Go on alone.
Okay, and so it begins. As Devi said, this week we're going to be talking about Dharma and all of the implications and ramifications of that. But we should start by understanding what Dharma is, defining it. And so Dharma has a variety of meanings. It has several facets to it. The first and perhaps most important is that it means the inherent nature of reality. And so in that sense, you could substitute Dharma for the consciousness of God. It's the inherent true nature of reality. Secondarily, it also means the cosmic laws of creation, the ways that not only people need to behave, but the way that the whole universe behaves. And so God, the way Lahiri Mahashaya, one of the line of gurus, I'll explain some of the terms because there'll be, as we said, nearly 1,500 people who are new to Ananda. And so when I use terms that they may not understand, I'll try to stop and explain them. But Inner Renewal Week is meant to be the deepest of all of our programs. So conceptually, Devi and I aren't going to hold back. So if you're new, buckle up because we're going to try to go deep this week. But as I say with terminology, so our line of gurus consists of Babaji, Jesus, and Babaji. Jesus met together with Babaji in the Himalayas some centuries ago and said, we need to send the vibration of inner communion with God, meditation, to the West. And so that began our line of gurus. Also, it was a changing of ages from the darker age of Kali Yuga to the age of energy, Dwapara Yuga. And in that change of ages, there was necessity, a different expression of religion. Or, in terms of this week's classes, one could say a different way to relate to Dharma and that inherent nature of reality. And so these great avatars come into the world at the time that the world needs them, and especially at the time of changing of great energies. And so Lahiri Mahashaya came into this world with the specific mission of bringing the inner techniques of Kriya Yoga, but also a secondary, this is going to play into the classes this week, a secondary mission that was in some ways just as important. And that was that he came to not only teach, but to model in his own life that the expression of Dharma in this age, the way to worship God was changing. And in the darker age, in order to worship deeply, in order to try to commune with God, you needed to withdraw from society. Society was just too dark. So in the East, the great yogis headed up into the caves in the Himalayas. And there are still some up there, but not as much. In the West, they went to monasteries, and the medieval monasteries are built kind of like forts with big, heavy walls around them and little cells that are like caves. So they withdrew from society. But as the change of energy and the change of the expression, not the Dharma, because Dharma is eternal, but the way that we relate to it can change. So the change of dharmic action for those who wanted to go deep spiritually changed from withdrawal from the world, seeing the world as something inherently negative, one might say, to living in the world but not of it. And symbolic of that, Babaji initiated Lahiri Mahashaya up in the foothills of the Himalayas, and Lahiri begged him, "Let me stay here." And Babaji said, "You have a wife, you have children, you have a job, you have to go back." But that was saying symbolically that the Dharma of this life, of these times, is not to withdraw from the world, but rather to live a spiritual life connected to Dharma within the activity of the world. In the Bhagavad Gita, it says Babaji is well aware of the restlessness and tendencies of the modern age. And so it is that energy of how to live properly in this world is a part of Dharma. So first of all, Dharma means the eternal truth that precedes any outward expression. Lahiri Mahashaya put it this way, that God is pure consciousness, been defined as Satchidananda, but that pure consciousness of isness and joy and consciousness takes a little tiny part. Lahiri said 1% of his mind, 1% of his consciousness. And with that 1%, he creates all of the known outward universe. And beyond that, we see the physical universe, but there's also an astral universe and a causal universe. A universe of matter, which is what we see, and a universe of energy. Now in our age, because of the changing consciousness, we can begin to see, even scientifically, that energy and matter are just two forms of the same thing. And so basically all scientists now understand and accept Einstein's proposal or theory or now proven fact that energy and matter are convertible. So we can take energy and or matter, and we can, with atomic energy, we can convert that matter into enormous amounts of energy and create a bomb. But Master said, yes, science can take matter and create energy, but it has yet to learn, like the yogis can. The atom bomb can destroy things. The yogis can take energy and create things with their consciousness. And so we're climbing slowly up the ladder of awareness. But in this age, that sense of Dharma, of right action, includes not simply rejecting the world, but living in the world, but understanding that we have a higher Dharma, which I'll come to in just a minute. There are a couple of other shades of meaning of Dharma. Dharma also means the universal laws of matter, but it means the proper laws and ways, regulations, and duties by which a person wanting to live in harmony with righteousness needs to behave. And so dharmic actions mean to behave, to think, to be in relationship, in a harmonious relationship with that Dharma of creation or the Dharma of God. And so our highest duty is to try to relate, and ultimately, because the masters have brought the techniques, not just relate to, but to merge back into that cosmic consciousness from which we were all created. Swami Kriyananda put it this way, said the essence of Sanatan Dharma means eternal righteousness. The essence of Sanatan Dharma is that God created the universe through his thought and everything in the universe. And we are sparks of that creative consciousness. Every individual soul is a little spark of that creative consciousness. And our highest Dharma, our ultimate destiny, is to merge back into that consciousness. So God creates the universe and it goes out, and then the universe eventually merges back in. But it doesn't do so all at once. Individual souls, because especially as we come into the level of consciousness of human beings, we have the gift of free will. And with that free will, we can choose to have actions that are righteous, like the Pandavas, and that help us merge back into God. Or we can choose to have actions that are not righteous and push us farther away from that universal consciousness. Now, eventually, we will merge back into God. Eventually, all of the little tiny comets and satellites and all of the stuff floating around in our solar system, ultimately that will all merge back into the sun. But a spaceship can choose to fly to the sun, where those unknowing comets just have to wait for gravity, which is on the physical level the law of love, on the psychological level that which unites, to pull them back in. But we have the choice to merge back into God. Now, Swami said, and this is in the introduction to the interpretation of the Bhagavad Gita, essence of the Bhagavad Gita. What is the highest duty of a yogi? I'm going to give you Swami's answer. I'm going to give you just a minute to think. The highest duty of a yogi, how Swami answers it. This is not the merging back, but this is action in the world. What's the highest duty? To be in all circumstances even-minded and cheerful. Isn't that interesting? We'll return to that because it's a very interesting and profound answer. So, to remain even-minded and cheerful under all circumstances. What that means, in order to do that, you have to have the ability to have control over the reactive processes, which is, if you can really do that, that's a very high state and will lead you to union with God. To be cheerful means you have to have not only the ability to withdraw and be non-reactive, but you also need to have your energy uplifted at all times. So under all circumstances, to be able to withdraw your energy or the reactive processes and keep it uplifted. A good goal for us as yogis. Okay, so that gives an overall sense of Dharma. But what is coming back now to our part in this whole picture? First of all, Dharma really has these two aspects to it. One is the connection to God and the withdrawal of our consciousness from outer involvement back into the unity with God. But it also has, just as importantly, as long as we find ourselves caught in the dream of Maya, in the creation of God, then it is our duty to act properly, to act righteously within the dream. And so both of those, the withdrawal, the ultimate destiny is to reunite with God. The destiny or the righteousness of this particular lifetime, which is one in a long series of them, is to act righteously in such a way that it helps with that ultimate goal of finding God. When Swami passed in 2013, the year of his passing, Devi and I went to India. And while we were there in Bangalore, we went to have somebody suggested and then took us there, a reading from a Nadi reader. Now, Swami has written a book called the Book of Brigu, and the Nadi readings are very similar. One is from the line of Brigu, the other is from the line of Sukhdev. But these ancient seers had the ability to, I guess the best way to put it is to ignore the delusion of time. And so they could write a reading for somebody 2,000-3,000 years in the future. And so there are certain readers, and you go, in this case, in Bangalore, we went to a Nadi reader, and we gave him, all we gave him was our birth date. So he cast a little astrological chart, and then he went and he looked in a storeroom, and there are boxes about, 15 inches long and 2 inches deep and 2 inches high. And they have accordion style of folded up pages written, in this case, on palm leaves. And he came back and he asked a couple of questions. Do you have 2 brothers and a sister? Yes. Oh, okay, then I have the right reading. And so he began reading. The first thing he said for both of us, the purpose of this life is moksha and guru seva. He captured just exactly this teaching of Dharma. What is our highest Dharma? Moksha. Moksha means reunion with God or freedom from delusion. It actually, moksha, the 2 syllables, mean the cutting of delusion. And so moksha means that your delusion has been cut, and therefore you live in truth, you live in the consciousness of God. So moksha and guru seva. Now, I say that for Devi and me, but it could easily be said for most of the people sitting in this room and a great number of people who will be watching online, because we have come to the point where our understanding is that the real purpose of life, and ultimately, as Swami puts it in the vows for Nayaswami, the only purpose of life is the search for God and the attempt to reunite with Him. But we also have a life, this particular life, where the soul, which has incarnated again and again and again, is now in this particular life attached to this particular body and these particular circumstances. And so we have the ultimate goal of merging back into God, moksha, but we also have the concomitant goal of right action, in our case, guru seva, which guides our actions, but right action in this life. And so those dual purposes, those dual dharmas, it's very, very important to understand that we have both of those going on at the same time. But the more important of the two is the ultimate reunion with God. Because we can even try to act dharmically, but if we don't have a relationship that we're moving towards something higher, we're moving toward some aspiration, some goal, then our actions don't have any compass to them. They don't have any way of judging, is this a good thing or a bad thing? To give a kind of a mundane example, suppose that when you were young, 5 years old, you just got this obsessive desire to be the first person on Mars, and you just could not leave it go. For us, we want to go a farther place than Mars, but so you've got this obsessive desire to be the first person on Mars. Now, as you start going through life, if you hold that desire, it's going to inform your choices as you go through life, the kind of subjects that you might study. Oh, I don't think I'm going to study dance because studying dance isn't going to get me to Mars. I think I'll study mathematics instead, or psychology or something. But so your choices will be informed by that long-term goal. Should I marry? Should I not marry? Well, is it going to help me to marry to get to Mars? If I do, what kind of partner do I need to marry? And so on. Well, that's a mundane example. But if you are going to have as your primary goal, as your only purpose of life, to reunite with God, to find moksha, then the question becomes, is this choice going to help me in that ultimate goal? And if we did nothing else during the week except get all of us to really understand and live by the thought that in our choices, both the large ones and the daily minute-by-minute choices we make, if we could just keep that aligned to our all overall purpose of achieving moksha, then that would help direct our life. And so, as Babaji was telling Lahiri Mahashaya, it isn't a question of whether you should live in the city or not live in a city. It's not a question of whether you should marry. You're already married in this case, but that isn't the right question, nor of what kind of job you should have. That's not the right question to ask. When Devi and I are asked by people, what is my Dharma? Most of the time, they're asking, what kind of job should I have, or what role should I have? Or that isn't really the right question to ask. The right question to ask is not should I have a job or not, or what should the job be, but rather, how should I do my job in such a way that it continues to lead me toward my overall goal of moksha? And that, if nothing else, if we could come away from the week with really, embedding into our consciousness that we need to align our choices with our overall goal of achieving moksha, then we will have really succeeded in what we need to do this week. So that individual daily, this life activities which involve the ego. So the ego needs to, another way of putting this, is that the ego needs to align itself to the purpose of the soul. Because this ego that we have, the body, the personality, the likes and dislikes, Swami defined the ego as a bundle of self-definitions. The bundle of self-definitions that we have in this life, this ego, is just one of many. 10 lifetimes ago, we had a different bundle of self-definitions. Now, they were probably pretty closely aligned because you make kind of evolutionary progress. You don't make huge leaps, but they were similar, but probably quite different. One definition, were you a man or a woman? In one life you're a man, in another life you're a woman. So that self-definition of gender changes from time to time. And all of this bundle of self-definitions change. But our job is to make sure that our self-definitions become more and more aligned along the ultimate goal of achieving moksha. So the question about decisions that we make are not so much what, but rather how. How will doing this, or if I'm doing this, how can I do it in such a way that it will lead me toward moksha? So that's your Dharma. So your Dharma is moksha, and your secondary Dharma is how do I live righteously in this lifetime in such a way that it helps propel me toward my ultimate Dharma, which is reunion with God, reuniting with God. Tomorrow we're going to talk about the spiritual aspects of that. And then on Wednesday, we're going to talk about how to live in this world with all its complexities and stuff, how to live dharmically, righteously in this world. But so to come back to this theme of aligning our activities in this life to our overall goal of moksha as the basic fundamental, one might say, compass by which we can direct our activities and our decisions. But Dharma changes as the consciousness evolves, because we go through a long, as the soul goes through successive incarnations, the soul doesn't evolve, but the way the soul expresses in any particular lifetime evolves. So our consciousness evolves. And Swamiji has captured that thought in with the term progressive development. So the consciousness progresses. Now, Swami didn't come up with this. It's embedded in all the great religions and certainly embedded in the scriptures of India. But as we, one might say, go through successive incarnations, our consciousness gradually matures, gradually gets more and more refined. And Master, one of the very, very first things he ever wrote and published in America, I find this really fascinating, is the psychological chart. And it shows the tendencies in our consciousness. Isn't that interesting? Very early he had the energization exercises, and his first book was The Science of Religion, but he did a little pamphlet with the psychological chart. And in the scriptures of India, there are basically three aspects. Swami called them eternal wanderers, but they're aspects of creation. One is the contractive, solidifying aspect. Another is the expanding aspect. And then in the middle between those two is the energizing. Now, if you're excessively contracted, you're heavy. You're like a rock. A rock is nice and dense and contracted and isn't going to move. So in a human being, that's a heavy consciousness. So there are three elements to consciousness. There's heavy, there's activity, and then there's light in this progressive development. And it's very well explained we use this in our schools, working with the children. Usha's somewhere in the audience, I assume. There she is. Has written a wonderful book, Awake and Ready. I highly recommend it. And in that, she talks about the elements of progressive development. But Swami also refers to wherever you are along this continuum of development as your specific gravity. And so a person with a heavy specific gravity, for instance, let's imagine that we've got different people and we're in front of a guru, and the guru says, the highest duty in this lifetime is for you to be even-minded and cheerful. A person of very light consciousness says, yes, Guruji, I'll do my best. The next person down, still moving toward light, but active, more of an active mind, says, yes, Guruji, but explain to me why I should do that. Instead of just automatically accepting, he says, this is part of Master's psychological chart. How different people of specific gravity react to advice from of wisdom. So the first just says yes, the highest, the completely sattvic person. The ego active, but tending towards sattva, says yes, but explain to me why I should do it. I need to understand before I'll go along with it. The next person down, still ego active, but ego active now tending toward heavy, says, well, what's in it for me? Why should I do that? Is there some reward if I'm even-minded and cheerful? Am I going to succeed in business better? Am I going to get rich? And so, but he's still willing, he's still got energy, willing to go along. And the lowest, the heavy consciousness, wouldn't be there with the guru in the first place, but this is an imaginary exercise here. The heavy consciousness will say, even-minded and cheerful. I know how to be even-minded and cheerful. Go to sleep. When I'm sleeping, I'm not reacting at all. I'm happy if I have a good dream, but maybe not. And the other way is I'll have a couple of stiff drinks. That helps me get even-minded and cheerful. So he won't move, or he or she won't move off of that position except by threat of punishment. So threat of punishment at the lowest level, sense of here's your reward at the next level, explaining why at the next, and just saying this is what you should do at the next. Now I know all of you are just saying, well, I'm just going to be even-minded and cheerful. I don't need any explanation, but okay. So we'll move on from there. So it's important within this that we don't try to live according to societal norms, because society, especially at this age, is basically the second from the lowest. There's a lot of activity, a lot of restlessness, but very much a sense of what's in it for me. And so if we live according to society's norms, we will live according to a lower specific gravity than what, if we're sitting watching this, we have either a light or an ego active tending toward light consciousness. And so having that specific gravity, we don't want to be too much involved in the world because everything has magnetic influences. If we're too much involved in the world, or too much involved with people, too much involved with media, all of that will tend most certainly to draw our consciousness down or outward. And if our ultimate goal is moksha, we don't want to engage in activities. Our Dharma is not to engage in activities that prevent us from finding moksha, or engage in lower specific gravity activities that draw our consciousness down, because we're trying to achieve the ultimate expansion of consciousness and the ultimate lightness, one might say, where not only is our body light, we don't have a body. Our body is light, not a light body that you can weigh in on the scale. It's again, just to emphasize, our ultimate destiny is moksha. And if we align everything with that, but according to our level of specific gravity, certain activities are dharmic. The way Swami put it is that by and large, because part of Ananda's Dharma, one might say, is not only to live these teachings, but to share these teachings with other people, to share these teachings with the whole world. Little catchphrase, live it and give it. So we've got to live this dharmic consciousness, and we need to share it. But Swamiji said, and I've certainly seen, Devi and I now have been teaching for 55 years. You cannot really share these teachings with somebody who is more than kind of one step down from your consciousness. And even if you do, there's only a little tiny temporary change. And quite frankly, you yourself, I begin to lose interest. You know, if I were to go to a party and explain these teachings the way I'm explaining now, and I get people yawning and going and huddling in the corner and kind of pointing, you know, I'd begin to lose interest in wanting to share these teachings. But at that same party, if there's a person just kind of new but kind of interested in this, I'd be happy to share. So one level down is where we can be effective in sharing these things. And then I'll end with the interplay between karma and dharma. Karma is essentially the concept that everything that we think, feel, say, or do, Master said that thoughts have a reality. There's an energy to a thought, the same as there's an energy to electricity. And so if you have a thought, that has energy. So depending on the quality of it, so energy by its nature goes out. It expands outwardly. And so every thought, every action, every word, every desire creates a little burst of energy, and that energy goes out and it's going to return to us. So karma is the energy that goes out and returns. So whatever's coming into your life, everything, is because at some point in the past you sent out a burst of energy, and maybe it's good karma, maybe it's bad karma. You know the difference between good karma and bad karma? It's not whether we like it or not. That's generally what people would say is good karma. You win the lottery, that's good karma. You have one number off, that's bad karma. That isn't the question. Swami said, good karma is that which takes us closer to God. So good karma is that which moves us toward moksha. Bad karma is that which moves us away from moksha. So we have beautiful examples in this community of people who have gone or are going through a diagnosis of cancer. Is getting a cancer diagnosis a good karma or a bad karma? Depends. Most people in the world would say it's terrible karma, bad karma. If it moves you closer to God, then it's good karma. And it is not the diagnosis, it's your reaction to the diagnosis. It's not the disease, it's not the event, it's not the things that happen to you, it's your reaction. So our reactions to whatever comes to us, coming back to the yogi's first duty, our responsibility for whatever comes to us is to try to be what? Even-minded and cheerful. Oh, cancer. That's interesting. As somebody said, oh, that is going to help me get rid of all my other little fears. Isn't that a beautiful attitude? We had a big forest fire that burned down the whole community in 1976. And our son was 11 days old. We got a letter about 3 months later. So you'd think, oh, what terrible karma, what awful thing to happen. We got a letter about 3 months later from somebody who said, what wonderful karma your son had to be born at a time when so many prayers were being sent to Ananda. Isn't that a beautiful attitude? Doesn't that change from, do I like this? Does that event, losing your house, losing your security, does that move you toward moksha or move you away? So, don't reject anything that comes, because you, your soul, and God are cooperating with this particular lesson plan, and you have drawn that, exactly what you're getting, you have drawn that, and it is meant for one purpose, if you take it correctly. It is meant to help you move you toward moksha. So, just to summarize, our highest goal, our highest duty, is to find God and reunite with God. All lesser duties are meant to align our activities, our thoughts, our interactions, all of our activities. The Dharma of this life is to live in such a way that we're in tune with righteousness, and that attunement with righteousness helps us to achieve our ultimate goal of union with God.
So, once again, good morning. Hello. Just a little personal note here. It was really wonderful for us in the last period of time exploring these teachings, because Dharma is something we toss it around all the time, but to really understand it and the implications of it, it was actually quite a profound experience for us to do it. So I hope we can, Jyotish did it so beautifully, I hope I can just share how much the insights that also came to me. First of all, I'll be touching on some of the same points, but with a different perspective. So I did a little research. What's the origin of the word Dharma? Where does it come from? Well, there were two levels. First, it's from Sanskrit, and just as in Swami's marvelous The Art and Science of Raja Yoga, he talks about ancient carvings found that were thousands and thousands of years old of yogis meditating, little line drawing on a stone. Well, the Sanskrit root for Dharma is just the syllable D-H-R, dra. And it means that which holds or supports. And similarly, they have photos of the symbol of that sound that is thousands of years old, carved in a rock. And that's the beauty of the Indian culture. It's the depth and the antiquity. There's nothing like it on this planet. That's why Swamiji said India is the guru of the world. And they've earned it. And they continue to earn it. But then going down a little deeper in Sanskrit, it evolved still in that ancient language to the word dharman, which means that which supports and upholds. So instead of just support and uphold, or that it's a fluid, the power of that. And this word, the concept of Dharma, is woven into so much of our experience of Ananda and of the spiritual path and of our understanding of Master's teachings. And of course, we referred to it, the essence of the Bhagavad Gita, Master's interpretation of the symbolism of the Gita, which is before Master explained it, really, we've taught Master's explanation in India, and Indians come up to us and said, we've read the Gita since we were children, we had no idea what it meant until we heard Master's Yogananda's interpretation of it, and we'll get to that in a moment. But one of the two guiding principles of Ananda, one is people are more important than things, meaning it isn't like a personal thing, like, oh yeah, we love everybody, but it's looking for the welfare of the individual, the spiritual welfare of the individual above all things. Swami, and so the other guiding principle is where there is adherence to Dharma or truth or right action, these are all interchangeable definitions. Where there is adherence to Dharma, there is victory. Yato Dharma stato jaya, Sanskrit. And so this has again been one of our guiding principles, how to live righteously. Jyotish referred to the fire, and many of you know the story, but the cause of the fire, in 1976 it was a piece of faulty county equipment that was shooting off sparks off the roadway and caught the grass on fire, and they acknowledged it. Every one of our neighbors who also sustained loss sued the county for restitution, and they settled out of court because the county knew they were at fault. But Swami wrote a letter to the county, and he said, we sustained the greatest loss, and yet, don't worry, we're not going to sue, because we came here to give, not to take. Live and give. That's what we were doing. And we were all so proud. We could have gotten millions of dollars. We could have rebuilt the community easily, but we didn't. We survived on the grace of Guru and on Dharma. Where there is adherence to Dharma or right action, there is victory. Swami called his successor, the worldwide spiritual director, Dharmacharya, he who upholds Dharma. Not he who is the big authority, not he who knows it all, but he who upholds Dharma. And so it's such a part of the fabric of our culture. And then in Swami's really masterpiece, The Essence of the Bhagavad Gita, we had the wonderful blessing of being in India with him when he was writing it. This was in Gurgaon, which is a suburb of Delhi. And he wanted us, I won't digress too long here, but he wanted us to stay in the home with him. He had his staff there, his cook, and Miriam was there, his nurse, and his secretary Lakshman was there. And he said, I want you to stay, but there's not a room for you. But I built a little porch up on the roof. And so it was this little mosquito net covered with 4 posts right next to the generator, because the power always goes off in India. And so the generator would go on all the time. And we called it the bird cage because it was sort of like that. But the blessing was we got to stay in the home with Swamiji, but also his office was right next to it. And we could see any time, day or night, 2 a.m, the light would go on the office, and we could tell he was typing. And then he'd come out, I just wrote 10 more pages, do you want to read them? And there was this momentum and energy that I've never experienced before or since. And the essence of the Bhagavad Gita I think it will be one of the great spiritual classics of all time, really. It's a great gift to the world. But in the introduction to that, the very first thing he writes about is Sanatan Dharma, which is known as the eternal religion. And I want to quote because it's so beautiful, and he defines it this way: Sanatan Dharma are those timeless truths which are rooted in eternity. They predate the forming of the world and are not confined to any religion. I mean, that simple thought is so freeing and expansive. Eternal, timeless truths that nothing can change. It doesn't matter what politics or nations or religions are dominating. It doesn't matter, because underneath it, there's the sustainer, from the original Sanskrit, the upholder, and that's truth. And in Swami's, he calls his songs philosophy and music, and in that wonderful song, Go On Alone, the world may change or disappear, but truth can never die. And we have to hold on to that, especially in these times. And so this concept of Dharma, right action, truth, virtue, you can't pin it down. You can't say it's this or that. It's all of those. And in the Bhagavad Gita, as we said, as in Master's interpretation, it's really the story of Dharma conquering adharma. Adharma is the opposite. It's lack of truth. It's lack of virtue. It's wrong action. And how these two forces, the Kauravas and the Pandavas, it's a historical event as well that happened. But Master tells us it's not limited to those people at that time. Eternal truths, these qualities, the righteous and the unrighteous, are parts of us eternally until we begin to take control and say, I don't want to be pulled down anymore. I don't want to be adharmic. I want my energy to be aligned with Dharma. And this is in the Gita, again, I'll quote this because it's so important. This is towards the beginning in the 4th chapter where it starts out, I'll lead up to where Arjuna, the great warrior, who Master tells us was he in that lifetime, and that Babaji was Krishna. So here's Babaji and Master playing out this drama on the field of Kurukshetra thousands of years ago. And Arjuna is the great warrior, the great upholder of Dharma and virtue. But the opposing negative army, they're aligned in the battlefield. And he goes out and he asks our Krishna, who is his chariot driver, very important. God can't fight our battles for us, but he can be there to uphold and support. But we have to fight the battle of adharma. And Arjuna looks at the opposing army, which are his relatives, his cousins who are trying to take the kingdom away from him. And he looks and he says, I can't kill these people. These are my teachers, my family, my people I grew up with, my cousins. And then the whole rest of the Gita, from that 1st chapter, Krishna explains how, and the interpretation is, we look at these qualities within ourselves to be dishonest, to be self-centered, to think of ourselves first, and we say, I can't kill those. That's who I am. How many times have people say, well, I know you're right, but that's just the way I am. Well, it's not just the way you are. It's how you choose to be. But you can choose to be something else, and you'll be much happier, is the point. And so all of it is Krishna explaining to Arjuna how to fight the battle dharmically. And he says to him, and here's the quote, Krishna says, you know it, but it's one of the great quotes of humanity. Whenever dharma or virtue declines and adharma or vice is in the ascendant, I, Krishna, God, incarnate on earth, taking visible form, I come to destroy evil and reestablish virtue. And that's why every great avatar, every great emissary of God, from Christ to Buddha to Babaji to Master, that's why they come. They look at the world around them, and that's why Babaji, at the Kumbh Mela, if you've read Autobiography of a Yogi, and if you haven't read it, get it today and read it, start reading it. It will change your life for the better. At this great spiritual gathering, Babaji called Sri Yukteswar, who in time will be Master's guru, and he said, I'm going to send you a disciple to train him and send him to the West, because we need, the world is it's on a razor's edge, and it is. We see the forces. I don't need to tell you what's going on in the world. You read it yourself. But it's these great ones come. Master came, and he called it his spiritual campaigns. He went, starting in 1920, back and forth across the country, speaking in every city you can imagine in America, and pouring out energy. Sometimes he'd be giving, for a month, giving 3 lectures a day. Just phenomenal what he was able to accomplish. But that's why they come, to reestablish Dharma when they realize it's getting weak. And that's why we've come, to reestablish Dharma within ourselves, and then to help in whatever way we can to bring it into the world. That's the mission of Ananda, really, to do the work, further the work of our great masters, to be models, living it and giving it, Dharma. So now let's be a little more specific and practical. How do we know what dharmic action is? What is right action? I mean, every single day we are faced with choices, aren't we? What should I do? Is this the right thing or is that the right thing? And how do we begin to figure it out? Well, again, we can go back to the great exponents of yoga, Patanjali, who gives us the Eightfold Path to God. And it starts off with dharmic behavior, the yamas and the niyamas, the do's and don'ts of the spiritual path. And then from there, it goes, the progression, the Eightfold Path, that leads to liberation. It starts with how you act in the world. And then it goes from there to right posture, energy control, interiorization, concentration, meditation, samadhi. But the foundation of it is Dharma, right action. And what are those points? We know the yamas and niyamas. If, for those of you who are new, if you haven't read, again, autobiography, Art and Science of Raja Yoga by Swami wrote it, and he explains all this so beautifully. But the yamas, which means control, things we need to work on. So nonviolence, which changed the course of Indian history. That's what Gandhi used to make the British leave India. So nonviolence, non-lying, non-stealing, non-sensuality, and non-greed or not attachment to even what we do have. And then there's the niyamas, which means non-control. These are the basis of dharmic living. So it's cleanliness. It doesn't just mean a clean house. It means cleanliness of mind, keeping a purity of heart, cleanliness, contentment, even-minded and cheerful. Tapasya, or self-austerity. And then, where are we? Introspection. That's another way of saying, analyze yourself. Look at your motives. Look at your actions. Are they what you want them to be? And if they're not, then change them. And then finally, right action. What's the last element? Devotion. That's dharmic action, is devotion. And again, we read these, we hear people talk about them, but use them. Use them as gauges in the decisions you make. You know, if you're tempted a little bit, non-lying, well, if I just hedge it a little bit, is that so bad? You know, or if I have that extra half a pizza, is that so bad? You know, just to gauge your decisions and your actions by these. And then in preparing for this, I also found something very interesting. Another ancient exponent of yoga, his name is Vasyadhyana, and he defined what is dharmic action and adharmic action. And for the body, the mind, and the thoughts. So So a Dharma of the body. Some of these reflect Patanjali. So a Dharma of the body is violence, theft, sexual overindulgence. Dharma of the body is charity, helping the distressed, and service to others. A Dharma of words, or what one writes, what speaks or writes. So what is a Dharma in what we say? Falsehood, caustic talk, slander, and absurd, foolish talk. Dharma of words is truth, talking with good intention, and gentle, kind talk. A Dharma of the mind, ill will towards anyone, covetousness, denial of religious values and morals, and Dharma of the mind, compassion, detachment, and faith in the goodness of others. They reflect Patanjali, but kind of on a more practical level. But the point in sharing all of this is we have markers in our lives. It isn't just, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to make a decision. Dharma is not that obscure, particularly if we ask for the guidance. How, in every situation, some things, okay, I know what to do, but some things we don't know what to do. Then to ask the question, what's the Dharma of this situation? And if you align your activity with that, I've told the story sometimes before, but it was a very, very life-changing experience for me. Another woman and I, this was many years ago, were working on getting a Christmas mailing out. And in those days, it was before computers. Whenever I say that, it reminds me of something our son said when I was reading him a story when he was little, and he would always want one more chapter. And finally I said, you know, when you grow up, you're going to have to read so many stories to your kids for all the stories I've read to you. And he said, did your mom read you stories? And I said, yeah. And then he looked really thoughtful and he said, well, where did she get the books? And I said, what do you mean? Weren't they really rare in those days? And so, you know, there was only the Gutenberg Bible and it was chained down. And anyway, this woman and I were working on this mailing, and it was a week of intense work throughout the day. And we knew we both had to be there. Swami Kriyananda pulled up in the middle of the week in his car, and he said, I'm going to Los Angeles, and I've been invited to give some talks there. I'm going to give some lectures, and then we're going to go to Disneyland, and I have room in the car for one of you. Who would like to go? And Dharma. Both of us wanted to go, obviously, but I felt inside, this other girl, she's not strong enough to make that decision, but I am. And I made that decision. And the more I think about it, Swami could have just come up and say, I want that other girl to go. She has a really good voice and we need singers. I would have understood. But he didn't do it that way. He wanted me to make the choice. And that night I had one of the most inspiring and profound dreams I've had in my life. And so you look inside. Do I have the strength to do this? I think I do. Do I want to do it? Not necessarily, but I can do it. And if you follow that, you will feel the blessings that come. So just to say, look, let Dharma be your guide in all things. And then, how do we know our Dharma? Well, here's another wonderful quote from Swamiji from the Essence. The duty of everyone is that which is particularly his own, ordained for him by karmic bonds he himself has forged, and must untie to release himself from attachment to ego. So every one of us has a different Dharma to find freedom, because as we were saying earlier, we've all made different choices in the past, and it's brought us right to where we are now. Some of those choices were really right on, they were dharmic, but we all know some of them weren't, and that's why we're still here. And so to look at the particular lessons that each one of us uniquely has. I've shared this at some point earlier, but there was a Kriya initiation some years ago that Swami Kriyananda was conducting, and everyone would go up to receive his blessing in the Kriya initiation. And afterwards, a small group of us gathered around him after the ceremony was over. And he said, I had a very unusual experience as you each came up to be blessed. As I blessed you, I could feel your unique path to liberation. And it was different for every one of you. How could he feel that? That's, of course, an amazing thing. But for us, more importantly, we can't compare ourselves to others. It doesn't matter what someone else's Dharma is. We have to do our Dharma properly and well. In fact, again, it says in the Gita, to do one's own duty, even unsuccessfully, is better than to do someone else's successfully. To do your own Dharma, even if you fail, that's what you need to learn. Better than, let's say, to give you an example, let's say in the past, you were a writer, and you were a good writer, you wrote good books, but it was a little, at the end, you kind of got ego involved with it. Oh, I'm a good writer, people like what I write. But then in this life, you have the opportunity to be a writer. You're good at it. Is that your Dharma in this life? Probably not. You already learned what you learned. Maybe in this life, it's to serve in total obscurity without anyone ever knowing who you are or what you know. And that, to do that is more important than to be a successful writer again, to succeed in someone else's Dharma. So look at the patterns in your own life. Make choices that are based on the guidelines from the great seers, the great exponents of yoga. And then there's two aspects to it, and I'll just close with this. To embrace our Dharma, and that's what our theme of the week is. Once you begin to get a feeling, do it to the best of your ability, however humble it might be. Swami would tell a story about one of his brother monks. They were building some part of a church, and they were nailing in the studs, the pieces of beam that go behind the sheetrock that no one would see. And this other monk was just being very, very careful how he hit the nail into the wood so it wouldn't damage the wood around it. And someone said to him, "Why are you taking so much trouble with this? No one's going to see this." And this man looked and said, "God will see it." And that's an important, I try to bear that in mind when whatever I'm doing, if I'm serving a meal or arranging something in a house or talking with someone, let me do it to the very best I can in service to God. And you can tell when people live that way. I always acknowledge the singers because their music is beautiful. Swami's music is beautiful, but they do it in service to God, and that's why we're inspired by it. It isn't like, oh, I have such a good voice. I am serving God by sharing this music. I'm serving God by cooking this meal. I'm serving God by doing this computer coding. I'm serving God by cleaning out the little barn where the goats live. And if we can do everything we do to the best of our ability, and then with the additional thoughts, without any attachment to the fruits of what you've done, You don't need to stay around. There was a story, one of my favorites, of a saint, a very saintly soul in India, and Krishna appears to him and said, "You have pleased me very much. I will grant you any boon that you want." And he was a man of great humility, and he said, "Oh, I don't want a boon, Lord. I just want to love you." And he said, No, you've earned a boon." And he said, "Very well. Whenever I walk through the countryside in my wanderings as a sadhu, wherever my shadow falls, if it touches an animal or a plant or a person, let that being be blessed, but let me never know it." And what a beautiful attitude. So when you act dharmically, to truly act dharmically, it's without attachment. Just give it to God. And then finally, in making those decisions, what to do. If you have formed a guru-disciple relationship, from Ananda, of course, sits with Master in our line of gurus, let Master be your guide. What would you have me do? I will do it to the best of my ability. I will do it without attachment, but I want to know that this is what you want. And if we can do that, we can embrace our Dharma, and it will lead us to liberation. Thank you.
Come gather round, we'll sing the blues away. Dawn now is breaking, and the mountains say, it's only light can make the darkness run. Lift up your head, greet the rising sun. Greet the rising sun. We'll chant of battles won, shots not of anger. Joy will be our gun. Before the light, the veils of sorrow rend. In ecstasy, all delusions end.